All right, y'all. I was in the market for a new gimbal that I could use specifically for my vertical real estate video setup. And in the process, I found myself amazed at how far the Zhiyun Crane line has come with their new 4E right here. Now, currently, I use this over here, the RSC3, for all of my real estate video work. And before that, I used the Gimbal SOG and Crane 2 and Flycam that can all be seen back there with the cross sticks. With the RSC3, I do love the fact that, let me pull it back out. I've got this handle and a lanyard attachment that I can talk about on this channel a lot, but I can't deny the way you have to switch around this gimbal to make vertical mode and back again was becoming, well, extremely tedious in my everyday shoot where owners can't leave. Yes, you can push a button and put the gimbal into portrait mode, but you actually lose one of those three axes of stabilization when you do that, and it's much more difficult to operate. All right, back to the house full of occupants. In this situation, I have to shoot everything downstairs, photo, horizontal video, and vertical video before moving upstairs, switching around spots with the owners, and then do it all again. Switching from photo to video, well, we all know, not the biggest issue, but then switching from horizontal video to vertical video and then back so many times, I mean, I was spending way too much time rebalancing my gimbal. That's when I started looking for another gimbal I could have just specifically for vertical work, because I'd rather carry an extra gimbal setup to save me that on-site time. Now, out of all the gimbals available, why this one in particular for vertical? Well, that's because it's actually designed in a way that most others are not. The way this bottom arm for the gimbal is designed, the bracket simply slides on and off of the bottom and onto the side. There's no extra bracket pieces to keep track of, no extra time switching cameras to the new bracket mount style system. Not only is the process easier to switch, I find it's actually much closer to level when you make that switch than on my usual rig over there, where I have to take the entire bracket off, which in turn means more time spent. If you've not noticed yet, I'm kind of obsessed with the time I spend on site. Not saying I have to be on site as short as possible, but I'm a huge stickler on creating processes to make things easier on myself so I can spend more time focusing on the minutia of the shoot itself. So if you're into that kind of stuff and real estate creating in particular, think about liking the video, subbing the channel, you know, all that jazz, see the rest of my stuff. All right, let's talk ergonomics. I know I already mentioned how much I like the general aesthetic of the exterior with the gray joystick Star Wars feeling. There are a few other things I really like about it. I really like the way they kicked out the side panel that has the record button, the joystick, and the third button you use for changing shooting modes. On my main rig, those buttons are up top, directly above the handle, a little harder to access. Now, if you're a lefty, these buttons kicked out on the other side might give you some issues trying to use the joystick at the same time, but if you're a righty like me, you'll probably find it more comfortable to operate. I also like the way there's a scroll wheel and a separate button on the front of the handle. My other rig, these two are in opposite locations. I like this location a little more because the scroll wheel rests where your index finger naturally should, and that works better for me because I use it more. The last thing I'll talk about, the basic exterior of this design, is this bottom plate build out, which allows you to set it flat on surfaces without the need of these extra tripod legs like every other gimbal I've ever owned. If you want to stay as small as possible and as little extra add-ons as possible, this is something extremely thoughtful. Now, since I've been working with the Zhiyun brand a bit over the past few months, I reached out to my contact Sherry over there to see if they had anything small specifically for this purpose, and she instantly suggested this new Crane 4 because it is smaller and lighter than the 4 with all the same options, functionality, and payload carry, which is beneficial. And again, the fact that it has this super cool Star Wars joystick look, well, that sold me even more. Needless to say, Zhiyun did send me out this gimbal for testing, but let me be completely honest and say, one of the things I love the most about this company, the absolute most as a creator, is how little control they want over the video processes I do. They never give me any talking points to hit, never any rules about what I can and can't talk about or how many videos they want me to make. They just want me to make an honest review, and they never ask to see the video beforehand. Zhiyun trusts the products they create enough to let us creators run free, and that's an incredibly powerful thing in my opinion. So even though they did send me out this 4E for testing, I do still have some issues I'll be talking along the way about, and they are not sponsoring the video. That actually goes to new channel sponsor WeGotEditors.com, but more on them a little later in the video. All right. Even though my biggest goal with this vertical gimbal was to have no rig at all, something bare bones and always ready to go for vertical content. But if you've been here before, then you know that staying small, well, with no accessories is kind of the opposite of my style, so I thought I would at least give it a test all rigged up with more gear than I need. Let's get into the ones you see featured on mine right now. All right, here we go. On my regular rig, I utilize this side handle with a lanyard, and that allows me to hang the weight directly off my shoulders, and that gives me the ability to create those super slow, fake gimbal shots that I'm kind of known for. But with vertical video, you typically want something faster and more dynamic, so I wanted to try out something completely different than I had before. As you can see, I purchased the Zhiyun wrist support and arm combo myself to give that wider grip of the two hands, like this, and to see if the wrist support actually does anything. Does it support the same way the lanyard does? Obviously not. But let me just say it does make a difference in the long-term use of a mainly handheld gimbal, and that was, to say honestly, shocking for me. It took me a bit to get it kind of adjusted to something I felt was actually doing anything other than just barely touching my wrist, but luckily, the way they have it attached via these rosettes on the bottom give them what seem like an infinite range of motion options. If you have this gimbal or the Crane 4 OG, I cannot recommend a single accessory more. That being said, with these attached, the super cool base plate that I was showing you earlier, if you did not notice, becomes unusable, so you will then have to attach these tripod legs. Not the biggest deal because they do come included with the gimbal, but it's a bummer the way their best accessory negates one of the newest features of the design. As a matter of fact, the only big con I have from this design is that it doesn't break down any smaller for transport, obviously, than pulling the tripod legs off. Mainly because the battery and main sections don't separate. I actually find the stability of the Crane 4E compared to my main rig, the RSC3, to be much better with my current setup. If you're interested, I'm using the Sony a7 IV with the Loa 9mm for wide shots and Sony 50mm for vignettes, but I have a 12mm full frame that's super heavy and I love. I never get to use it. I don't know if the difference is the smoothness is because of the payload difference, but between the two, the 4E is quicker to balance, the camera feels much smoother and steady on top of it, the locking mechanisms on the arms are way better too. My old Weebill SOG had some issues keeping its horizontal axis when kind of tilting down and panning left or right, and I have not had that issue once with the 4E. Another issue I personally have is how annoying it is to use an exterior monitor with this setup. If you have the swing arm in the rear position to hold it down at an angle like this, for the majority of my interior shoots, it works perfectly. But if you slide this arm over to give you a wide grip, it continually has issues where the arm is hitting the monitor. So I have to put this attachment to kick the monitor out even further to the side so they don't knock into each other while panning. And once again, I realize this negates the minimalist setup, but I'm just letting you know. A little more room on this bottom piece could help alleviate that issue, I believe. And not having any mounting points further up the handle means that the best way to use this gimbal in the field is to make sure you rig it up in advance to see if there's any tweaks you may have, or like I said, just keep it bare bones. That's why I want it. Now, today's video is sponsored by WeGotEditors.com, and if you like the style of the vertical video I've been showing you throughout this video so far, well, that's who edited it. I sent over all my clips, they put it all together to the song of my choice for the platform I chose. Now, this is just a beta feature right now, and will be their next product release, but if you're looking for a reliable editing team, WeGotEditors.com is your place. I work directly with them in attempts to place the absolute best editors that can work within the budgetary restraints of our industry. These are not just editors. These are my editors that I use every day to deliver to my current clients. Think of them like an advanced version of Fiverr or Upwork. They don't just accept portfolio reviews to accept an editor. They require them to deliver on projects, and those are the examples you see shown. They're an amazing team that puts the exact quality of work shown on the deadline set in advance. Exactly what you're looking for from an editing team. And if you think you have the chops to be a part of their editing team and want to join a company that actually values your work and pays you what you're worth, they're also accepting applications for all kinds of new positions. Video editors, YouTube editors, portrait editors, copywriters, voiceover artists. You can type it out because it's pretty obvious, or you can follow the link in the descriptions down below. Now, back to the talk about this gimbal. Thanks, WeGotEditors. All right, y'all. While all that is great, there are some functionality issues I have found with the software and camera connectivity. I love the fact that most of these buttons and wheels are adjustable, but the choices they allow you to make with these buttons are kind of limited. There's also no way to change the functionality of this dial over here, and I have yet to find another tutorial that even mentions it, so I'm not entirely sure what it's for. On the Crane 4 OG, I think it's mainly usually for the light that's attached to the gimbal, but without the light on the 4E, I think it may link up to a follow focus attachment, but again, I'm not really sure, and I don't have the ability to change what it does. I would love to be able to change my camera's ISO or shutter speed or basically any camera functions, but those options are limited. I can use the record button with no issues without having to be manually connected, but everything else for camera control has to be done on the camera itself. Hopefully a future update will allow for more control of the cameras and these exterior buttons, but until then, I do appreciate them trying to make everything more accessible for us to operate more quickly and being able to reassign the buttons that are there. Just a few more options would be cool. Overall, the Crane 4E is a big surprise. I can fly my Loa 12mm full frame 0D lens with absolutely no wobble, and that alone is a win compared to my other rigs because it's a beautiful lens. With the wrist support, it is more comfortable to use for longer periods of time, even when doing those crazy twists and turns, and from all my testing so far, it is extremely axis reliable without any drifting. Add the fact you can switch from horizontal to vertical in less time with less extra parts and less gear, this 4E just stepped it up in tier level. Let me know what you think of this gimbal or the vertical video created by WeGotEditors in the comments down below, and let me know if there's anything I did not cover in this video that you have questions about, because I'll answer it down below. Catch you next time. Boom!